Hello again, visitors and friends. Hi. I want to talk today about what mindfulness is and what mindfulness is not. And this is something that's become pretty commonplace. The topic of mindfulness, certainly the word, has gone from being virtually unheard of outside of Buddhist communities to being arguably mainstream in our country here in America. And so there's no shortage of books about mindfulness now, websites devoted to mindfulness, and lots of talks, essays, studies, and even YouTube presentations like this one on what mindfulness is and what it is not. And so I encourage you actually to do some searching. Do some searching and hear lots of different voices about this topic. It's surprisingly broad. It's very simple, but therefore surprisingly broad. And different teachers, different presenters have a different perspective on what's included in the topic or the subject of mindfulness and what is not, based on kind of their starting point and where they'd like to go with it. So from my point of view, mindfulness at the very, very beginning, it's good for us to note that this is a term that comes to us from the Buddhist tradition. It is actually one of the steps on the Buddhist Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path that helps us transform suffering into freedom. The Four Noble Truths of Buddhism are the core of that tradition, the fourth of which outlines the Eightfold Path, which is kind of roughly understood to be ideas for wise living, kind living, that help us live with hearts and minds that are more open and at ease. And the sixth of those steps, the sixth of the steps of the Eightfold Path is called Right Mindfulness, or Wise Mindfulness. And it introduces us to the contemplative practice, the meditation practice, the self-awareness practice that they call mindfulness, that we Buddhists call mindfulness. And so I'm aware mindfulness is an English term, it's the English word we use, and that over the many years that Buddhist practice has been adapted and spread throughout our world, many different words in different languages have been used to describe this state, I guess, or attitude toward awareness. And so the word we're using today is an English translation, and we use mindfulness. And I like it up to a point. I like the word mindfulness because it kind of implies to be full of mind, to be full of awareness, to be like present. Wow, I like that. I like that. The hesitation, though, that you hear in my voice is around the way we in the West use typically the word mind. We tend to equate mind with the activities of just this organ here, the brain. And the implication in the Buddhist tradition is not limited to just this. It includes certainly thought, consciousness, and all of the activity of the brain, but it also includes awareness of body, as far as sensations, right, through our sense organs, and perhaps most importantly for this conversation, it includes the activity of emotion, so what we might call heart. So the word mind could be translated as heart. It could be translated as knowing. Knowingfulness, heartfulness, mindfulness, presentfulness. They kind of get increasingly awkward as words as we go. So mindfulness will do, but please just let us remember, it includes more than just the activities of thought consciousness. It's a way of being present. It's also important to acknowledge everybody has this capacity. It isn't something that is special or unique to meditators. It is certainly not anything unique to Buddhists. It's a quality of mind that actually all of us have experienced many, 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 many times, but we're generally unaware of it. And so mindfulness practice is kind of reminding us of a quality of consciousness we already possess. And I personally think of it as a baseline consciousness that's always active, and mindfulness meditation being a process of sort of removing that which is not mindfulness, as opposed to adding something new called a quality of mindfulness. It feels a lot easier to me to be reminded, oh, no, it's already happening. It's already there. You're just letting go of what is not mindfulness, right? So strictly speaking, mindfulness is non-egoic awareness, which is an unnecessarily big and clumsy word. Non-judgmental awareness might be a little better. Non-analytical awareness might be better. Non-critical awareness might be better. Sometimes this is described as just bare awareness, just awareness. So it's awareness that doesn't include labeling. It doesn't include dividing. It doesn't include what we're used to doing, which is to judge, analyze, compare, rank, attach, push. You know, the things we like, we tend to attach to. Things we don't like, we tend to push away. It's just a sort of restful, open, non-grasping state of awareness. Like, oh, I notice the smell of incense. Oh, I notice the parts of my body that are touching the earth right now, right through my seat and my knees as I'm in posture. Oh, I'm noticing the feeling of cloth against my skin right now. I notice the sound of birds or cars outside of my window. So it's that state we all have before I label car, and before I label, ooh, lots of cars, loud cars. Ooh, I don't like the cars. I wish I lived by a river, right? You can feel that I'm moving further and further away from my immediate felt experience. And so mindfulness practice allows me to remember, oh, right, why don't I let go of that for right now and return to just the experience of hearing, just letting that come in, just being present to the sensation of the cloth against my skin, right? Before I label it as cotton or a little coarser than I expected, or I like this shirt, I like how it fits. Before I go into the narrative, before I go into the analysis, before I go into comparison, all of that is what we call egoic awareness. It's filtered through my personal history. It's filtered through my perceptions. It's filtered through my preferences, right? The things that I like, the things that I don't, the things that I wish I had more of, the things that I wish I had less of. It's just resting in what is. Oh, I noticed that. Oh, I noticed that. So in meditation terms, what we call mindful awareness, is understood to be a little clearer perception, right? Because our perception isn't filtered through our history and our preferences and our comparisons and our judgments, right? We understand that my personal history, my preferences, my judgments are going to be unique to my experience. Right? Busho is going to have his own perception, his own understanding of how the shirt feels, and whether or not he likes the sound of the cars outside. And you may have very different perceptions. You may have very different preferences, right? That's the level of difference, the level of ego. It's lovely, perfectly fine. But mindfulness is that very first layer of just the noticing before any of that other activity shows up. So it's probably pretty easy to imagine if I'm staying closer to just perception, just noticing, you can kind of imagine that's a much freer place. It's much less sort of busy, right? It's a lot less cluttered than these higher layers of preference and analysis and judgment and pushing away and grabbing a hold of. So we make a decision to intentionally practice mindfulness in a lot of different ways in meditation tradition. You can probably see that what I'm describing, mindful awareness, on its own, without any other trappings, isn't necessarily religious practice at all. It's something that's actually happening for you right now, all of the time. You're just noticing it. You're choosing to notice it. So in and of itself, separated from the other 7 of the Eightfold Path, just mindfulness has come to be understood in our culture as secular meditation, or at least one form of secular meditation, meaning it helps us hone our awareness. It's an incredibly powerful tool. It helps us to actually see and witness our lives a lot more clearly, and it can lead to stress reduction and lower heart rate. It's a fantastic aid to any kind of counseling or psychotherapeutic work that involves inner awareness. We get much better at observing ourselves clearly without the bias and the narrative, right? But in and of itself, it's not Christian or Buddhist or anything. It's just sort of human consciousness, just a human being observing the experience of being human, right? And that's one of the reasons it's taken off so much in our culture, is it doesn't necessitate a belief in a system. In and of itself, it's just a type of awareness that we already possess, right? So very, very, very simple. Just non-judgmental awareness. What's going on? Non-interpretive, non-analytical, non-preferential, non-egoic, just noticing. So when we set a timer and we do what we call mindfulness meditation, generally speaking, we're going to choose something to be mindful of, a sphere of our awareness, a part of our awareness to be mindful of, that we can kind of return to, so we can kind of strengthen that muscle, right? A little bit like going to the gym and deciding, is today going to be a leg day or an arm day? Is today going to be a cardio day? What am I going to concentrate on? And so mindfulness of body and breath would mean I'm going to be aware of the experience of having a body, my contact with the earth, the posture of sitting upright, the shape of my body as I choose to sit, how I choose to balance my bones, right? The experience of breathing. That's what I'm going to return to. And when I notice that I wander off, I'm going to come back again and go, no, just mindfulness of body and breath today. Just body, just breath. Also, there's mindfulness of eating. Let's practice mindfulness of eating. No distractions, no other stimulus. Let's just notice the smell of the food, the anticipatory impulse toward wanting to put the food in our mouth, right? We notice what happens to our stomach. We notice what happens to our mouth as we bite into the tangerine or the raisin or the hot dish or whatever it is you're having, noticing the textures, noticing the smells, noticing the taste, noticing. There's a huge amount of density to the experience of eating. Actually, there's so much going on. So to not be distracted by anything else, conversation or TV show or music or whatever, to just focus on eating, then eating becomes the anchor, right? That becomes the object of our mindfulness practice. Mindfulness of walking meditation, we call it, right? Mindfulness of sitting, mindfulness of body, mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of eating, mindfulness of, you can imagine, you could plug in anything here, literally anything. It's just pay attention to just the thing that you're doing in a non-judgmental, non-analytical, non-preferential way. Just notice what's coming up. Mindfulness of thought, mindfulness of driving, mindfulness of emotion, right? Especially important in a meditation tradition. What am I feeling right now? What am I feeling? What else am I feeling? What else am I feeling? Right? What's underneath that? Where does that come from? So mindfulness, mindfulness, mindfulness. We hear that word all the time, generally speaking, described as non-egoic awareness, non-preferential awareness, non-judgmental awareness, but it's the baseline for meditation of beginning to train ourselves. There's a way that I can pay attention to my everyday life that is much simpler because it's not filtered through all these layers of conditioning that we all have, right? And wow, what an opportunity to not only learn to see more clearly, but to experience some of the peace, at least a hint of some of the spaciousness of just noticing what is, instead of always being caught by our reactivity to it, right? So I encourage you to play with that for a little while. I'll post another talk probably about what mindfulness is not, to be kind of a sibling to this, because I think talking about what it isn't is just as important as talking about what it is. So that'll be my next post, and it'll be a companion to this one. But explore this idea. As I said, do a little research on this. The internet is a fantastic library, right, for all of us to access when we need to. See what other people say about this. See how they understand it. Find a voice that really resonates with you. And if you have questions about this, post them in the comments section, or feel free to reach out and drop me an email. I'm always happy to engage with you about this kind of stuff. flyingcloudzen.org is where you can find all the stuff that we do and where you can find me. I appreciate your attention, and we'll see you next time. All right, thank you so much.